Um, so I'm not going to take board roll call right now, um, nor declare any conflicts since we're not voting on anything. I will ask if we have any public comments before we get started. Okay, hearing none. We always like to see everybody's lovely faces, so if you're able to participate and have your camera on, that would be great. We also don't want you driving in a car with your camera on, so we understand that as well. We're glad to have you here. And John, let's go ahead and oh, good. Carlene just came in. Let's get started.
All right, I will start with the ED report. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me one moment, and you guys can all see that. All right. So thank you all again. Happy Monday. It's a beautiful day out there. I I'm still lagging from spring break. I did not come in from a 2 a.m. flight, so I cannot feel the pain that Linda has. Um, but I am a little tired and realize that it's sometimes hard to jump into meetings. So bear with me as well today a little bit. First off, before we jump into things, I want to welcome Meg Rains, who is our new program assistant that is going to be supporting predominantly a number of our work under the Vital Conditions Network, but also our work in the Community Care Hub as well. Um, and I am actually going to turn it over to Meg to give a little bit of an introduction of herself, maybe just a little bit of background, Meg. And she joined us April 6th. So she is basically 1 week in. While we all took time off, we made her get to work right away. So I'll turn it over to Meg to say hi and give a quick little intro about herself. And you're on mute, Meg.
All right, there we go. Thanks, John. It's nice to meet everybody. Today is actually the beginning of my second week, and it's been a lot of information to take in. But it's been really fun. I'm excited to get to work this week, hopefully. I live in Chelan, Washington. I've been here for about 20 years, I'm guessing. Um, and I have a diverse background. I have lots of experience in project management, event planning, marketing, and general administration. So I hope that I can bring something to the team, and I'm excited to work with everybody and love the work that this company does. And in fact, the reason I filled out the application is I was going to the website to look for volunteer opportunities. And then the program assistant popped up and thought, well, I could do all those things. So I applied and luckily got the job. And I'm thrilled. So thank you, everybody. It was great to meet you, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
She's jumped right in with a number of questions and just hungry for knowledge. So really just want to give her kudos for really fitting right in with the team. So Meg, welcome. And if you all have an opportunity as we do things in person or you're in the office as well, I encourage all board members to introduce yourself to Meg and say hi, or if you're out in the community as well, just so that she's aware of some of the other players that are part of Thriving Together. I don't have a slide up here, and this individual might got a little bit of recognition in February, but I also just want to call out Dell again, who was a Baldrige Foundation Award winner for the government sector for his leadership development and the work he's doing with Renew. So Dell, congratulations. Wendy and and basically, I feel like almost all of Dell's team, I know that's not true, but a lot of Dell's team was out there supporting him as he received that award in Baltimore, which just shows the level of team support Dell has and the kind of leader he is. You unmuted Dell, so
I did. I just thank you for the support on that. And it was awesome to be in Baltimore together. I keep telling people I'm just Dell from Moses Lake, literally. But to receive national recognition for the work that we're doing here not just at Renew, but the partnerships that we've developed across our system here in our 4-county region. It's really incredible to see what can happen when a team comes together and we push through the challenges and the hard things to really have successful outcomes in an organization. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate the support.
It was great to see. It was great to be there and see kind of the energy. And especially, again, I'm going to emphasize to see Dell's team there and how much they just supported and appreciated Dell's leadership. I'm putting up on the screen our mission just as a kind of a continual focus. As we spent time at our board retreat in March, and as we're going to start developing our board assessment and work around some of our board metrics, I'm going to continue to cycle back a little bit in board meetings to bring up our focus around our mission and strategic priorities. So we're starting to look through those lenses. And I fully understand as board members, you don't get a look at this as frequently as we do as staff. So these are your few touch points to kind of see on screen and remember as we're engaging in these board discussions, both what our mission is and really bringing partners together to advance health and well-being, but also how we're doing that through our key strategic focuses around improving and connecting systems of care, inspiring regional and local collective action, especially through that Vital Conditions Network, and strengthening belonging and civic muscle. So as we continue to see, even today, as we're seeing presentations from Dr. Kane, from Mariah around our capacity building efforts, continuing to look through those lenses on how those efforts align and the work aligns with these 3 key strategic priorities, and or how are there other ways we can continue to support these kind of efforts to continue focus on getting more in alignment with the work we're doing. A few statewide updates I wanted to touch base on associated with that. I just wanted to give a call out that there's actually been a large number of conversations across the state, specifically focused on belonging in Washington State. And I had shared this, I think 2 months ago, or either at our board retreat, that there's been the Washington Economic Justice Alliance, which is housed in DSHS, has been hosting a belonging and vital conditions convening across the state of Washington with some of their partners. Civic Commons, which is a nonprofit in Seattle, has also been hosting and supporting Washington Belonging Table conversation with a number of various partners across the state. And then Wendy and I believe Jesus also were able to be on a presentation with Thriving Together U.S. Civic Innovation Forum, focused on some of these civic engagement conversations in Washington State as well. And so there really is a large amount of alignment around groups really leaning in what does it mean to be a state of belonging and what are ways we can continue to look at building up belonging in Washington State. We've had a number of conversations with Luke Wall locally from Only 7 Seconds, who's also had a number of engagement and conversations around social connection and belonging, not just in Washington State, but across the nation with a few partners. And so there's just really, what I want to emphasize is there's a lot of parallel things going on that a number of us are trying to figure out statewide how we help those intersect. And there's a lot of energy to move into this space. So as we're looking at our priority around belonging and civic engagement, this is going to be a place where I think we're going to see additional growth throughout this year and the next couple of years, and a place we're going to continue to want to track and see how we support that work locally in our region. In conjunction with that, and more focused with connections to systems of care, our coalition of ACHs, and you can see our executive director for the coalition, Nicole Peppers in the middle. North Sound, ACH, and us were able to present at the Rural Health Conference this year on our community care hubs of Washington State. So Nicole represented the broader statewide network of community care hubs, and then Liz and I gave examples of more rural community care hubs in Washington State. And as a reminder, this is a connection with the 1115 waiver that we have with the Healthcare Authority and Accountable Communities of Health to build really what we're calling community care hubs, or that community-based care coordination infrastructure across Washington State to help people get connected to health-related social needs. And so I encourage you all, as you know, you've heard presentations from Caroline. You can always check out more information under the Coalition of ACH's website as well. We're continuing to work and build referral networks in our region, and you can see those details under the North Central CCH.org site. And again, for North Central Washington, that's really a partnership of Action Health Partners thriving together in advance, and you can kind of see that on the slide. Morgan from our team really wanted a picture of it, so I'm gonna honestly say this was a canned picture of me presenting. It is not a real picture. And we did it as a joke, but then we actually used it in the end. So I appreciate those who participate in that. We also were able, being on the legislative advocacy side, we also were able to do a Hill Day this year again, up in Olympia. It was really a great full day. We had a number of partners coming with us. You'll see on here, we had an opportunity to engage with different state entities. And so top left was a meeting we had with the Washington State Healthcare Authority. We were able this year, North Sound ACH was doing a Hill Day on the exact day as us, which to be honest wasn't planned, but just worked out well. And so we coordinated both a social with them, and we coordinated the meeting with the Healthcare Authority with them. And so you'll see our partners from North Sound and us having conversations with, you can see Michelle Needham who's a Deputy Policy Director for the Healthcare Authority, and Teresa Tamara, who's been in our region before and who is also supporting the Rural Health Transformation Project work with the Healthcare Authority. Just having discussions about the work we're doing in our regions, conversation around Rural Health Transformation Fund project work came up as well, and how ACHs can be supportive of that work. And then bottom right, we had an opportunity again to meet with the Secretary of State, Steve Hobbs, learn a little bit more about the work of the Secretary of the State, as well as, to be honest, some of his individual passions around Dungeons and Dragons and other work, which he would be happy to share with anyone if you ever come to his office. You can see pictures from our social, as well as in the top right, a few of our partners also had the opportunity to testify in person on a House bill that was going through the House of Appropriations. And so it was really a great opportunity to meet with state agencies, get an opportunity to testify into the process. We really had an opportunity to we met with, in the end, every one of our legislators in the 7th, 12th, and 13th district. We didn't have an individual meeting with Representative Burnett, but he ended up being one of the representatives that came to our social. So he really did have an opportunity to chat with a number of people from our group. And I don't see Emilio on here, but you can just, as you see that giant picture I put of him up there, you can see how he is already, skilled in advocacy with that smile on his face, and that firm handshake right there. So great opportunity. I asked Blake to join, and I saw him on here to share a little bit about some of our legislative and advocacy work this year. So I'm going to turn it over to him quickly to give a brief update of our advocacy work more broadly this session.
Thanks, John. It's good to see everybody. Yes, it was awesome to see the Hill Climb delegation this year. It's always great. I live in Wenatchee. I'm over in Olympia, all legislative sessions. So just love those days when folks from back home are visiting. We, again, this year, our legislative steering committee maintained and kind of fine-tuned our list of our guiding policy principles list that are driven by the vital conditions for health and well-being. And we did, as you saw from the previous slide, there were some pieces of legislation that members of our coalitions for health improvement were individually tracking, in addition to us tracking kind of a master suite of bills, and had the opportunity to testify and draft testimony that morning. So really getting kind of the full advocacy lobbying experience coming together in real time there for them during their hill climb visit. Kind of generally speaking, as far as the legislative session goes, I would say this was one of the more contentious and divisive sessions in recent years. It still doesn't look anything like Congress and the legislature on the federal level, but there were a lot of not only Republican versus Democrat issues, but some intra-party divisions, especially around things like data center tax regulation and the millionaire's tax. But with all of that in mind, the session still ended in time. There were some last minute intense negotiations around revenue and in the budget package, but ultimately the legislature adjourned. We'll have a very different legislature going into next year potentially. There have been several retirements announced, including our own esteemed Senator Warnock, who's had an incredible career. We'll be very sad to see her go. And then also there will be several primary election challenges and contentious general elections too. So will be interesting to see how that plays out in the coming months, and some of the priorities that candidates discuss will give us a bit of an insight as to what's going to define policy priorities for next year. Very, very briefly, the three budgets that our state legislature is responsible for balancing every session. It's the operating budget this year that was $79.4 billion in total, which was historically the highest that we have seen in state history. The transportation budget was a $16.6 billion, and then our capital budget that funds public infrastructure was $889 million. In the operating budget, we saw that was built by a mix of one-time solutions such as shifting and diverting revenues and dipping into our rainy day fund or state reserves. And then there were also targeted programmatic cuts and delayed expansions of different programs. And a huge chunk of this, relatively speaking, $1 billion aside for legal obligations to the state, which has been a growing cost driver in recent years. Specifically, what we've been looking at and tracking with Thriving Together and our steering committee, there are two programs that are both at the Healthcare Authority. The Recovery Navigator program, we saw reductions last year to this program, and again, it was reduced by 10% in the final budget, leaving that at $17.6 million for the upcoming fiscal year. Even though it's reduced by 10%, it was encouraging to still see that there was funding in there, given conversations around further reduction. And then also the Health Homes program at the Healthcare Authority was last year's budget on our in the 2025 session was only funded for one fiscal year, and it was great to see that again funded through fiscal year 27 at $11.4 million in total state appropriation, in addition to $33 million from the federal level. Transportation budget, I'll very briefly touch on that. It was really focused around preservation and maintenance. There was $164 million set aside to repave roughly 600 miles of DOT projects over this summer. And then we saw in our capital budget continued investment in affordable housing and homelessness services. So $200 million for homelessness infrastructure, and $123 million we saw go into our state's housing trust fund. One thing, again, I touched on this briefly, the millionaire's tax was really defining the definition of this legislative session. It did pass ultimately after over 24 hours of straight continuous floor debate in the House. I think I checked in around 5 p.m. and went home for the evening, came back around 9. They were still going, got back to work the next day after I got a nice sleep, and everyone was still debating and had not slept, and it went until about 5 p.m. the following day. So that was another record set for this legislature. Overall, I'll stop there. I would just say that this was there was an ongoing debate in Washington about progressive revenue versus some of the economic impacts. I think that the millionaire's tax, it's already being, there's a court challenge and it's being legally tested. This will maintain or become still a critical issue moving forward, and focus on policy by the minority party in next year. And just really looking forward to seeing what next year's legislative session holds, given the new legislature composition, and hopefully, we'll see some more encouraging trends with our state's revenue forecasts as they continue to unfold. I think there's 2 more this year, with the last being in November before the legislative session begins. Our revenue forecast earlier this winter during the legislative session, while we were still looking at a deficit, it was less of a deficit than previously forecasted. And so if that continues to trend upwards, hopefully we see some of these programs that have suffered cuts, such as Health Home, or not Health Homes, but Recovery Navigator program and others, be made whole again in the future. And with that, John, I'll stop there unless you or anyone else has any questions.
Any questions from anyone? All right, I'm gonna just keep going. And Blake, I'll keep you on for a moment longer because this ties to just a few regional updates I wanted to bring on. And so I had shared with the exec meeting with the board, we've been looking and been working to build out a legislative advocacy fellowship. We're working with Summer Hess to do some piloting and development of a program in partnership with Blake on what we could do around building legislative advocacy in North Central Washington. And throughout the last couple of months, Summer has been working to interview a number of individuals, both through our coalitions for health improvement and other groups that have been doing leadership or advocacy like trainings in North Central, to see where there's a need, where there's a fit, what would make sense and what would make sense to do in our region to support doing this kind of work. And based off of those interviews, a number of individuals really do see that this concept around building skills around advocacy and engagement in state legislature is a need. There's a number of trainings around leadership development. There are some trainings around advocacy, but it's really specific to sector-based and typically harder to get into. And so based on those interviews, we're proceeding forward to put together a small pilot to test this out over the course of this next year. And you can see, based on the interviews and the goals of this work moving forward, these are really kind of those 4 primary goals of what an advocacy fellowship would play. So leaders care deeply about issues but lack clear policy pathways for the development of that, bridging gaps from community concern to engagement in Olympia, building regional pipelines for advocacy leaders, and aligning with driving together advocacy and civic muscle strategy. So really, our goal is still to operationalize that we engage individuals who really want to lean into more of this upstream community-driven work. But the ultimate goal is to support and build really an advocacy strength within North Central Washington. You can see a few participants and potential outcomes that we're looking. So really, right now we're looking at this being more community-based organizations, nonprofit leaders, coalition members, somewhat tying it back to broader coalitions or efforts across North Central Washington, tying it back to some of the leadership training that people have already seen, supporting how people develop a legislative agenda as a whole. And I'm going to keep us moving, and I'll share a more one-pager after this meeting so that you guys see a little bit more detailed report. Here's the timeline that we were looking at getting started. So this would be a July start date as a small cohort. We're really looking at doing this in a distributed model where we'd be able to have groups within each region come together in person as they work on some of these skills. Ryan, Ruben, Peter, some of this had come up in conversations around with the Coalitions for Health Improvement, ensuring that there's an alignment with some of the conversations that are occurring in those coalitions, and so that it helps emphasize some of that strength building. And so we are, I know Summer is planning to reach out to Peter. It won't be you, it will be Kelly in Okanogan County. But all 3 of you to continue to look and explore what role the TRIs could potentially play as we develop this out, and especially looking at how you might be supportive in some of those distributed, localized locations for these individuals. But really, it's ultimately to really interconnect and build that advocacy arm as we connect and move this work forward in North Central Washington. Um, again, I'm gonna send out a one pager after the meeting that we've been developing, and I'll continue to keep board members involved, for the CHIs. Look forward to more information to come. And then the last thing I really just wanted to update everyone on, and if you, those board members who were able to attend the screening of the Hope Dealers, I want to thank you guys for being present. We had an opportunity to do a private screening with board members, the cast, and some community partners directly tied to those organizations of the documentary we put together of our recovery coach initiative and growth. I just really want to thank everyone who was able to participate in that. Linda, I really want to call out. I heard comments from Joey and a number of the recovery coaches, how much they appreciate the recognition from Thriving Together board, especially the board chair. So I want you to know those comments really hit home for the individuals that were there. I am sad to report that we did not get into any tier 1 film festivals. The, what am I looking for? The silver lining in that is now we don't have to be exclusive and we can start planning grassroots screenings. And so you can look forward to that information coming out and we can start moving. I know everyone was antsy about doing that at the screening and no one really liked the response hold off. So now we don't have to hold off and we can start working on the process of planning grassroots screenings. Any questions? That's the end of my report.
Thanks, John.
All right, I will turn it back to you, Linda.
All right. John asked for questions. Good to see so many more of us here. Welcome, everybody. We all got to our spots. We actually, when we started our meeting, we did not have a quorum, but we have a quorum now. So we had tabled our consent agenda, and I'm going to bring our consent agenda back to us. Before I ask for approval of the consent agenda, which includes the meetings, the meeting minutes and a report, are there any declarations of conflicts that anybody needs to declare? Okay. Hearing none, I would entertain motions to approve the consent agenda.
This is Dell, so moved.
Who was the second?
Peter,
Oh, hi, Peter. You're not in the office today. Drinking
not
coffee.
in that.
I'm just teasing. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye or a thumbs up, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say opposed or a thumbs down. Okay, consent agenda approved. Thank you all very much. Well, we're excited to hear from Dr. Soon Kane and Wendy around the Digital Equity Impact Report. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you two.
Excellent. Thanks, Linda. I guess I'm going to lose my voice right at the wrong time. That's odd. I've been talking all day. Thanks for allowing us to come and share this work. For those of you who've been around for a while, you may know we've been working on telehealth and to some extent digital equity work since 2021. We were written into a Community Health Network of Washington grant originally. It was a Department of Commerce digital navigation grant. In the beginning, we thought it was about telehealth. We soon learned it was about digital navigation. And as you know, we don't compete with our community partners, and this was solely in the lane of Tech Alliance. And so we reached out to them, even though we were the ones originally written into CHNW's grant. After the grant was approved and they were successful in receiving it, they did reach out to Tech Alliance. We reduced how much we were going to get so that we could bring Tech Alliance alongside and let them do what they do best. And so we worked with the Tech Alliance. on a body of work with the CH&W. And then if you recall, we had the chart funding, the alternative payment model, where the state came and spend $2 million in like 3 months. And we said, sure, we can do that. And we did. Give me money and I will spend it on good things. And so we actually approached Tech Alliance and said, hey, we have some pot of funding. Are you able to do some work in this area? And they brought back a proposal. And that was kind of the initial start of our true relationship with the Tech Alliance. And in that 3 months, the work that they did was incredibly impactful. That John and I went back to them and said, hey, we see the value of this work. We see it aligning with what we're moving towards with our mission. Could you give us another proposal to continue this work? And they, of course, did. So we invested $1 million over the last 2 years, $500,000 a year to continue the work. And with that, I'll introduce Dr. Sue Kane, the Executive Director of the NCW Tech Alliance, who's led this work. And she's here to update the board on the impact this investment has made. So, Sue, I'll turn it over to you. It looks like she dropped the slide deck in the chat for you.
I did, because I'll end up sharing my screen and then it'll be a fumble to try to get it shared. But thank you, Wendy. And I see so many incredible familiar faces. So I love this because I feel like some of you I haven't seen in so long. I saw Nancy Warner on the very beginning and thought, oh my gosh, some of you were so helpful in my own learning of systems thinking that it's going to feel like a return home as I share with you where some of this has evolved to, especially the storytelling pieces. So yeah, thank you all so much for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about where we've been for digital equity. And I did make a slide deck, but I want to invite you to please interrupt me, ask questions. I've got a place at the end to ask questions as well, but sometimes in the moment, if something doesn't make sense or I missed something, I'm quite comfortable with that. So it is your meeting and I am here hopefully to provide service and update to you. But with that, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully my slide deck. All right. Can you see it okay? Good. All right. Thanks, Linda. Linda's done this enough. She's given a nod. All right. Well, as Wendy introduced, I am presenting today on behalf of NCW Tech Alliance. Many of you will be familiar with the Tech Alliance. We have been in Wenatchee in the surrounding area for 26 years. It was founded in 1999 to bring really broadband over to Central Washington as the Greater Wenatchee Area Technology Alliance. We've been NCW Tech Alliance since 2021. And so I'll show you a little bit about that service area and that growth and that expansion. But it really set us up to be able to do some of this regional work alongside Thriving Together. So NCW Tech Alliance and our team, we have 8. We have an office in Moses Lake and an office in Wenatchee. And this team of 8 includes, I'll tell you a little bit more about her work, but Jennifer Walker, who is an AmeriCorps, American Connection Corps member this year and doing some really incredible work. I'll also point out Juan Servin, who's our technology programs and digital literacy skills instructor. You'll see some of his work. Rosie Martin, who is behind the scenes doing so much of our engagement and registration and support for both digital navigation and digital literacy programs, Sarah Sanford and David Maybe. So you'll see aspects of work that is, I get the privilege of being able to share, but I want you to see these faces in case you know or run into these folks and you can tell them about hearing about their work. So today's presentation, I've got it in chunks for you here. I really want to start by just context setting where we were in 2023 and the systems change level work that we have tried to establish as part of that strategy. And then tell you a little bit about some of the regional impact that investment of $1 million has afforded us. where we are finding that aligns with the principles for closing that digital equity gap across North Central Washington, and hopefully then land on where we hope to go in the future. So I'll start here, and this is a really fun photo. I want to pause because there are lots of stories, and this is a really important part of being able to not just present you with quantitative data, but the qualitative story behind it. This spring, we had a digital literacy cohort of business owners that are in the Wenatchee area this time. These business owners, there were 28 of them representing 19 businesses. They actually just finished an accelerator program where they got new computers and new websites. They got certification in AI skills and some basic digital literacy and cybersecurity skills as a comprehensive program. And so their businesses will go on and create job and opportunity and economic development. And so if you run across any of these folks and faces, just congratulate them. It was a 3-month program that they participated in this spring, and they met twice a week in the evenings at Mission View Elementary and worked on building themselves and their digital skills. And their impact is going to be felt throughout our entire region. It's just very special. Okay.
Sue, can I ask a quick question?
Of course. Yeah, please.
Range of businesses that they represented, or if you're getting there and I stole
No, that's perfectly good question. And there is so much to tell you that if I didn't include a detail, please ask. The businesses are small businesses. So there were some cleaning services, some contractors, a landscaper, a couple of cafes. So these are folks that have smaller businesses. Some of them were, 2 to 5 employees. But having access to digital skills and a website hopefully helps them grow. And many of them have aspirations for growing their businesses so that they have more jobs. So small businesses. It's a great question. I have a slide in here to tell you just about the region that we're serving. So you have a picture of the service area. Chelan, Douglas, Grant, Okanagan, and Adams County is the NCW Tech Alliance service area. And it's preaching to the choir to tell you about this region. But some of the things specifically when we're looking at the digital equity lens, the fact that it's rural and remote and that it's not uniform. There's nothing homogenous about this region. As you move across, you all know this. Winthrop, very, very different from Brewster, even though they're both Okanagan County. They're very, very different from Oroville. They're very, very different from Royal City and Othello. So each one is very diverse, and it's an expansive area. Providing comprehensive service, it takes really intentional strategy, and that's challenging. We are of deeply rooted habits and traditions and industry. We work often with the tribal nations and have had some opportunities to deepen our relationship with communities in Inchelium over the last year, as well as some of the other Colville Confederated tribes and the Wanapum tribe. We have a very language diverse region. We try to, as much as possible, all of the programming that you're seeing is being offered in Spanish and English. The cohort that you just saw of business owners, that entire program was delivered in Spanish. The instruction, the materials, the technical support. Many of our business owners are bilingual, but they think and ideate and ask questions more comfortably in Spanish. And so being able to offer that language accessibility is really important. I think some things here that, the infrastructure gaps, and I pulled, from our digital equity report in 2023, we knew at that time that things like fiber, that's foundational infrastructure, is robust across Chelan and Douglas and Grant County. Some really thoughtful strategic implementation of long-term infrastructure planning has fiber throughout those counties. Okanagan County, by contrast, is very limited. And so we have some major gaps in connectivity in the most basic infrastructure, and that affects everything on top of that infrastructure. We have some very resource constrained communities. Tax base is challenging. If you're on a reservation, tax base is non-existent. And so sometimes we're trying to move things with public-private partnership or with grant programs, and that federal climate has been really, really challenging. I think I wanted to end with a couple of additional bullets here that you all know inherently. Our region is incredibly innovative. It's incredibly connected. The network of people that I see on this call are people that are familiar to me. We love to collaborate. We love to bring what resources we have together and to be able to reach more people. And so that's a really fun place to be able to play. So there's a lot of challenge and there's a lot of opportunity to be able to build in. When we started, we actually had access to the American Families, the census data, and a Microsoft Tech for Social Impact team who built a dashboard that allowed us to go in for census blocks to evaluate digital equity on some specific criteria. And the QR code actually takes you to this dashboard. It's still live. It's a lot of fun. I'm a big data nerd. Many of you know this about me. But what we were able to do is by census block, find the places that were the greatest number of people in the greatest need within our region. These hotspots are lighter color or in yellow. There's an indexed value that's computed, and the inputs that this analysis was factoring were, individuals with lower education attainment, individuals without a laptop or computer at home, individuals without internet connection of any time or of any kind, people not using internet at broadband speeds, so low or slow speeds. And then the annual income spent on broadband because satellite subscription is quite costly and unaffordable for many of the communities in our region. And so it indexes and factors, and you can adjust some of these things. You can also look at this input level for specific select groups within that population. And then where we're looking for, is the highest impacted, and then the greatest population, we move over on the x-axis. And so we could focus in our programming on some of these dots and do a lot of our work in those areas. And you'll see the concentration of places like Royal City or Mattawa, or specifically along the tribal reservation, lit up as of the greatest need, even though there's substantial need across the entire region. It might surprise you if you like data to be able to explore in there how many of the neighbors and friends you have, even if you were looking at like East Wenatchee census blocks, where as many as 30% of the homes didn't have internet connection or a computer at home. So we used this data and we were able to put together some initial work. And really, I want to tell you that story, like from this base. Unfortunately, that data is a snapshot, and I want to point that out as we go forward. That only gets updated once every 5 years. It's a long-term data, so you can't do real-time measurement against it. You can build your strategy against it, but you'll need short-term indicators to be able to do the iterative design and improvement. But it's a great way to think about how to set up the strategy. I won't play this video, but you have this in your slide deck and it's wonderful. We actually, with the first burst of funding that Wendy mentioned, we made some videos that could be used by our partners and us to be able to describe what we mean by digital equity and the digital divide. And in 2023, we were sort of stunned to find how many people didn't understand what we meant by digital equity. We had a little fun with that, actually. There's a video of David Maybe down at the Apple Blossom Festival asking folks, what do you mean by digital equity? But what we came back with from that analysis was that as many as 1 in 4 of our neighbors and friends and people across North Central Washington are facing some kind of digital inequity, whether that be internet connectivity or devices, or they're missing specific skills. They're missing out on access to employment and education, healthcare, job opportunities, legal services, social and behavioral health services, and so much more. 1 in 4. And we reframed that to think about what could be the economic benefit of a region if we could unlock that digital divide. If you got 25% more access to education attainment and 25% more access to workforce or healthcare, what would that region look like? It's a really empowering place to be. And so when we're doing this data analysis, this is the gap that we're aiming to address. Now, because we're talking to you and you all are champions for the vital conditions, I want to also point out that we worked alongside John and Wendy really early on and started to realize, I think we didn't have the words or the framework before coming alongside Thriving Together. But the more we learned about the vital conditions, the more it was like a light bulb epiphany moment, because every single one of the vital conditions is impacted by digital access. Whether we're accessing public lands and we have to be able to schedule transportation or see transportation, whether we're doing remote learning and we have to have access to that internet connection and at a speed where we can actually turn on our cameras, or we're developing critical digital literacy skills for the future, whether we're finding or securing employment, the social connections that you might need, or the participation in a remote hearing in Olympia for civic participation. Hopefully, you see this like we see this. Digital access impacts all of the vital conditions. We really see it as an upstream condition that impacts everything downstream as well. If we are to invest in equitable access to connectivity and skills and devices for people, we can actually make measurable gains in improving their access to reliable transportation and lifelong learning and humane housing. So we can actually use this as a leverage point for all of those other social conditions. Now, this is a graphic that we generated an AI image to be able to really bring home the point, but digital access is limited for North Central Washington, and there are structural barriers and there are specific demographic aspects like our aging population or our income disparity across North Central Washington, our education attainment, specific language barriers, or just that uneven infrastructure. All of those are combined inputs. They all have a part of this. It's not a simple, this is the problem, patch, fix, here's where we put the funding in, and we get back out the opportunities after. Right? Like the opportunities that are on the bottom half of this graphic, like education and work and healthcare and legal services, we can get those outputs, but we actually have a pretty complex system that's affecting the number of outcomes that we're seeing. This is actually a graphic from a presentation that Wendy and I shared with the public health conference in 2 years ago, as we were trying to describe it's a really complex system, and systems, if you want different outcomes, you actually have to design a systems change strategy. Again, I might be preaching to the choir here. You all might be well versed in this, but this is actually from a framework that speaks specifically to levers of systems change work. And it tells you when you're trying to change a problem that's multifaceted, and it's a systems change strategy that you're trying to build. Oftentimes we aim for structural change because those are the easiest ones to be able to get funding for and to see the changes that we're making. We design for a new program, or we staff with a new person. We change a specific habit, right? These are the practices and the resource flows being, we're going to add money and create a new thing. Or maybe we change something about the policies. Those are structural and we can see those kinds of things. But you can also do meaningful systems change work, and sometimes more sustainably, if you aim a little bit deeper into the lever of this relational change layer in the middle. So things like addressing how the region works in relationship, how we work connected, how there are different power dynamics. So you consider, who is in power and who is not in power, where there's opportunities to be able to create a table where people can work together and feel comfortable working together. That's at that relational level. And then the deepest level that actually produces sustainable systems change work is actually at this transformative change level. And the transformative change level is our mental models. We all hold mental models. Your mental models tell you what you can do, what can be done. You have a mental model right now of what it looks like to not have internet access. Without knowing it, you've got a mental model of what that person looks like who maybe doesn't have digital skills. Maybe you think in your mental model that that person chooses to be off the grid, and that would be accurate for some of the people in our community. But that mental model is incomplete. It doesn't tell you about the young student in Chelan area who goes home and has no internet and can't explore college applications. She's 17. She's an incredibly beautiful Latina, and she's part of that as well. So sometimes addressing the mental models helps us to understand that the problem affects more than what we first thought. And it also helps us to see new opportunities that we may not have seen previously. A lot of what we aim for with our systems change strategy when we're looking at a 5-county rural region with a complex, hairy, big, wicked problem is actually a multi-pronged strategy that targets all 6 of these levers. This framework, by the way, if you're doing this kind of work and you haven't been exposed to it yet, is FSG's 6 Conditions of Systems Change, and it's an awesome read. Really, really great, and I can provide you the research if you're interested in learning more. So one of the first things that we had to do with our systems change strategy was create a structure for a collective impact. And this is another topic where you might be so well versed in this that you could probably be delivering this part of the presentation today. But as a reminder for folks who are maybe newer, or it's been a minute since you looked at this, our efforts for regional mobilization of digital equity partners, I'm going to tell you about this collective body of work here in a second, is really aimed at collective impact. The collective impact visual here is showing you that the size of the arrows might be the size of the contributions, and some of the partners that we work with, they are putting in considerable time and resources and people and data, and some are contributing a couple hours that they can volunteer and be a digital navigator. And every little bit adds up, but only if you can get them to organize. And so a lot of what we're doing with the systems change work is to try to get all of those arrows moving in the same direction so that there is an additive cumulative effect of all of those actions so that every single contribution, whether it's a couple minutes or a couple hours, is actually adding up and multiplying into a substantial regional system change. So more so than just collaboration where we're all doing our thing and aimed at the same thing, we're all doing our thing and we're moving the system in a different direction. I lost my little clicker there for a second. So in 2023, when Thriving Together came alongside NCW Tech Alliance, we actually worked first on building that regional alignment. And you do this with really specific efforts. We started by doing some landscape analysis work, and actually Summer Hess, who was named earlier in the call, was instrumental in helping us be able to get regional data. We partnered with the Okanagan Broadband Action Team, which was pre-existing in their organization. And I think Jody DeSegri I saw on here, I think was an instrumental part of that as well. They were submitting a county level plan and were great to come alongside the work that we were pulling together from Douglas and Grant County. And then Chelan County also had a broadband action team that was able to provide data and input. And we put together a regional summary report that was released in 2023 and launched a regional coalition that works on advocacy and knowledge sharing and program development, just really identified people that were interested in working together to be able to address digital equity. Many of your organizations are here. I saw Emilio, Linda is here. Of course, North Central ESD and the communities and schools were part of the very first group of folks who stuck their hands up and said that they wanted to work together on this. CAFE has been a partner since the very, very beginning. And so the work that was being done was an organization and being able to come and say, I've got resources. I know this is an issue. I'm willing to help you to figure out how to mobilize a regional effort. And the 4 points up at the top here, knowledge sharing and collaboration, increased visibility for digital equity work, improved funding, and enhanced access for underserved population. Those were the 4 priorities that were identified. They're still the 4 priorities that we're working from today. And our vision is simple. It's a connected future for every resident. So you can live and work and play and benefit from all the digital resources that are growing in abundance every day. So with some of that systems thinking in the context, in the background, if I move into what our strategy is behind those general systems thinking approaches, we built our approach around 4 strategic levers for regional alignment. We focused first on, or as 4 strategic levels, and the first is regional alignment, and getting folks to understand where they have partners, building community capacity, and literally adding additional people to be able to close that digital equity gap. And I'll tell you a little bit about our Digital Navigator program here in a second. The access to devices and skills, and how could we coordinate to be able to expand that access, and then the advocacy that's necessary to be able to expand the actual infrastructure that's needed in places where we don't have adequate coverage for things like internet and functional internet. These are the 4 levers that we were going to work on together to create that lasting, sustainable change. So I'll give you a peek at what this actually looks like. Not much in the way of outcomes yet, but I promise those are coming. I want to get you familiar with the strategy first. But the first lever was really focused around building shared understanding and regional alignment. And so we were focused on building that coalition and helping people understand what we mean by coalition, advocacy. And it's interesting that the civic engagement and the advocacy piece has been a really important foundational part of the Digital Access Coalition work. The communications that we sent out really early on focused on very simple language to help people understand what technology or what the coalition was, and we called it the NCW Tech Help, because people don't ask for, I need a coalition based on digital equity. People ask for tech help. And so it came with very specific, simple language so that our partners knew what we're doing and why we're doing it. We started also that first year with a digital access commitments campaign, and I'll share more about that here in just a little bit. But the commitments were, what could you do as an organization, wherever you were at, in whatever ways you provide service to the region? Could you make a commitment to be a part of the solution and close that digital divide? So making commitments didn't mean financial. It meant any of those levers, your policies, your practices, your relationships, they all added up. And then, of course, that storytelling aspect. How can we change that mental model by telling you about the student in Chelan or the community members who have their businesses in Wenatchee that you just saw? We have done a fantastic amount of communications. And I know I said I'd come back to the outcome slide, but this one just, It's astounding. The digital access outreach and engagement that we started in 2023, to date, we've sent just over 30,000 emails to digital access partners. We've had 181,000 video views for those videos. 181,000 video views is remarkable because that is just about everybody in North Central Washington. Some of us have viewed them more than once, but that's a pretty astounding number. So the outreach that we've done has been pretty expansive. The lever 2 that I mentioned was the community capacity, and our community capacity and humans that we've added. We actually have had opportunities to train community members who want to help to share digital skills with their neighbors and their friends. We've gotten professional training, actually. The Education Service District partnered with us that first year, and Stefan Troutman, who is brilliant, provided workshops for over 100 digital navigators that first year in-person workshops that actually helped them to be able to have better advice, solutions, and resources to share with their neighbors. We've continued that training, and to date, we've trained hundreds of digital navigators across the entire region. These folks are contributing as volunteers. In fact, we had just over 200 a year ago when I did this analysis, but it was 239 digital navigators that had 199 different job titles. It's nobody's job. This isn't a formal job title. You are a frontline staff person and you get asked the tech questions for MyChart. You are a paraprofessional working in a school and you get asked the parent digital navigator questions. So our digital navigators have a lot of different roles. And what we've created is a community of practice where we can share best practices. So we can teach folks how to be aware of cybersecurity issues or to add new skills for accessibility through AI, for example. The community practice meets virtually for ongoing professional learning opportunities. We've got one coming up actually on Wednesday this week with Jennifer Walker. Will be sharing a new toolbox full of accessibility strategies. And of course, then we also added the American Connection Corps, which has helped with some of the storytelling and some of the direct service tech help in some places where we really we needed to establish programs, working, for example, with the Foothills Community Center and our seniors, the North Central Washington libraries. So we're still working in partnership, but using that human capital in ways that expand access to those digital skills and resources. I want to tell you about this story while we're here. In community capacity and infrastructure, we actually had an opportunity this spring to partner with Confluence, and Confluence lent us their trainer that trains their staff on MyChart. And we did 5 community digital navigator trainings. So Sarah is here in the front row. And the folks who are here, this is Jennifer Walker, our Connection Corps, but these are all volunteers in Winthrop. We're actually at the library and they've just completed a 3-hour training to be able to help others to get access to their medical information on MyChart. They all got endorsed by Confluence to provide this service in the community. So you have a fleet of folks who can help you access your lab reports, set up your doctor's appointment, be prepared for your telehealth visit. And we were able to provide those trainings in Moses Lake. We did one in Spanish and in English in Wenatchee. There's another one coming in Quincy in Spanish. There was one in Omak. The trainers themselves, the digital navigators in Omak that attended, they loved it so much that they have now offered 2 more ECHO trainings since their training. So they take their training and they extend it so that they can share with additional people. And this is the power of tapping into that community and really growing our human infrastructure, at least for the skills piece. So the third lever was access to devices, skills, and support. And NCW Tech Alliance has really taken lead on organizing and then amplifying. So if there was a program already in existence in the region, we just added what we could and supplied additional resources. So for example, in Warden, there is a teacher who has been skilled and is trained in teaching digital navigation. And she needed curriculum to be able to work with moms and dads. So we provided curriculum to be able to work with moms and dads on digital literacy. And we provide her with refurbished devices when she hits a family that doesn't have a computer at home. We also go celebrate at the end of the year when she has a graduation for all of her digital literacy graduates. But in Warden, it's Prisma's program. And we're just there to backstop and make sure she has what she needs. In other communities, like the picture you see on the left, this was a Quincy cohort. You may recognize Araceli and Jose. They were members of the Leadership Summit. This is actually just before they participated in the Cafe Leadership Summit, they were a part of this digital literacy cohort. They took the classes in George and they learned how to use a computer and how to have an email address. They took home one of the computers that are provided with this digital literacy program. And when you armed two people like Araceli and Jose with digital skills, they have become incredible champions, not just for technology, but for vital conditions. Araceli sends me something probably once a week that she's organizing a breast cancer screening or social media awareness for parents. She's an organizer, an activist, and that digital literacy helps her to be able to do that, and she feels empowered. We also have had generous donations from community partners to be able to get devices in the hands of community members. We do refurbishment events and use that as a workforce development opportunity for young people and industry professionals. That's a different part of NCW Tech Alliance, but the refurbished devices then go back out into the community to support individuals in need of devices to be able to get jobs or go to school or communicate with family. And then the last is actually direct service, tech help appointments. I think Jennifer Walker has seen hundreds of people at this point who need help with a specific device or a specific skill. And so some of this was direct tech help. In the beginning, we actually were doing some pop-ups and showing up in communities. We've now got appointments, and you can actually book appointments. And we're in partnership with the library to be able to expand those services. And then the last lever was digital access. And this is that infrastructure piece. We were able to partner with the Community Health Network of Washington on their second grant after the one that Wendy spoke about, and provide funding, direct funding, and partnership to do some connectivity upgrades at Wenatchee Valley College, both campuses, the main campus in Wenatchee and in Omak and at Big Bend. We also did a Wi-Fi project and digital equipment in George and put a tech center into the George Public Library. They actually got a brand new library space. In total, well, I'll come back to that in the outcomes piece of it, but hundreds of thousands of dollars in digital services and infrastructure came into the region. So these levers build alignment, they strengthen the capacity around the region, they increase access, and they drive that infrastructure, and they're self-renewing. They reinforce one another. And what I want you to see, if it's not already coming through, is that this isn't a set of programs. We didn't just say, here, we're delivering this digital literacy program. We have it paired with the digital literacy program that builds into a community champion that then helps her to be able to host others. And she's now a digital navigator. And what resources does she need in this space? And it is a connected set of systems outcome. It's coordinated, it's very intentional, and it's by design. So it's not, random spaghetti at the wall. It's a strategy, not a set of programs. We've seen an incredible maturity of this work over the last 2.5 years. And part of that I can't tell you how impossible this would have been had it not been for a multi-year investment from Thriving Together. When you have grantors who give you 3 months or 6 months, and I will call attention to the way that our state currently funds this work. You might get a grant in October, you have to deliver by June. So you create these bursts and fits and starts, and you might not get the grant back the next year. And it's very difficult to create this kind of sustained investment. And we would not have seen this maturity across the region had it not been for Thriving Together. The investment that you all made created a place where we could move from awareness to building a little bit of capacity to now we're moving into a phase where we've got deeper alignment. And because it's reinforcing, we also have better awareness and capacity. So the maturity curve that we have over the last 2 years, when we started, we did not have partners who knew what we meant by digital equity. We now have partners who have digital equity woven into the fabric of what they do in the region, and it's part of their mission statements. And so that alignment piece is really about helping to create that coordination and augment what's going on across the region, but it isn't telling them about this problem that they didn't realize was underneath some of the things that they're doing. So for moving this through, I want to kind of show you what this looked like. And actually, we have a couple of those. We had 3 phases there. In that first phase, we actually focused on awareness and engagement first. And one of the very first things that we did together was launch Digital Equity Month in September in 2023. And part of that was opportunistic because, as Wendy mentioned, there was a huge bolus of funding that we needed to spend like yesterday. And when Jenny Rojanasatian sat down with Wendy and said, here's a whole bunch of ideas, Wendy said, let's do them all. And because Jenny is the incredible wizard that she is, she did them all. We had Digital Equity Month, and we had these early tech help pop-ups. We were at the fair, the Digital Navigator Basics trainings that Stefan taught. There were 8 of them in person all across the whole region that month. We launched a website with a toolbox and a hub of resources that has continued to be the backstop of this regional effort. It was all established in that very first month. And it was all aimed at awareness. We got the produced videos. We were at the movie theater. It was like a full blast attack. In phase 2, we started to build that regional alignment piece. In phase 2, it was about the network, the connections, and we're measuring connections in phase 2. How many new members to the coalition was a really important metric. Are we getting regional reach? Do we have everybody in that county? Do we have all of the diverse perspectives represented in the room when we're trying to design for a regional comprehensive strategy? So the coalition launch and kind of establishing that with the right people at the table to be able to make sure it was representative. We were doing digital literacy and we expanded some of those cohorts into new regions in this second phase. We added an AmeriCorps member for those direct service and for that landscape analysis piece. We started a Trailblazers celebration to create awareness of what was happening with other commitment makers and started to get that familiarity with partners that were maybe working in different parts of the region. We used those cybersecurity summits, and actually last year's cybersecurity summit was one of my favorite parts, was cybersecurity came through in so many of the digital access commitments. They realized that it's not enough to get somebody online. You have to actually make sure they're safe and they know how to do that.
Sue, I just want to let you know we have about 10 minutes.
Oh, geez. Okay. Hustling. Hustling. Okay. 2024 had the regional commitments campaign. And so I'm going to hustle past this, but I want to tell you, in 2024, we saw 52 organizations make digital access commitments. And then in 2025, we saw 55 organizations. A number of organizations came back. 23 organizations came back for a second time. And they collectively are regionally representative. I think many of your organizations are probably here. We saw cross-sector participation So the digital access commitments came from private sector, public sector, governments, small municipalities, school districts. So it's truly become the digital equity piece has been embedded in a cross-sector way across the entire region. In 2025, there were 55 organizations, and just under 22,000 people were directly supported by their partnerships and their programs, and this is self-reported. There's never enough time. I want to be able to tell you all the things. All right, so in phase 3, now we've moved into this space where we are working on the systems alignment and the structural change. And there's a couple of places in here where we really do want to make sure that as we mature, we're building tools that meet people where they're at. We're aligning on metrics. And I want to show you one of the metrics in particular that's interesting enough that we're moving forward with our digital navigators in this same way. But the commitments that we're getting each year in 2024 and 2025, and then I know this is a little bit probably too tiny for you to be able to see, but we put together a rubric that helps us to be able to categorize and quantitate the commitments that come in. And we've put them on a continuous improvement rubric scale. So if this thing never happened before, that's a level 1. There's no, for example, we're going to say this training, digital skills and digital literacy is the second row. No training would be a level 1. Oops, I'm going to slide. I hit the click. A one-time workshop or resource training would be at a level 2. A cohort-based or multi-session program, something that happens repeatedly, would be a number 3. If you're co-creating or there's some kind of aspect of iterative design and data inclusion, you'd get to a level 4. And that's for a digital skills workshop. So if our school district made a commitment that they were going to do this for parents and it was a one-off, that's a level 2 commitment. If they have something like prison warden, where it's every year and she's getting better and better at it, that's a level 4 commitment. We were able to run an analysis with all of the commitments from 2024 and 2025, the ones that we could place on the rubric. And there were 37 commitments evaluated in 2024, an average of 2.76, right? When we went back for the same rubric for our 49 commitments that we evaluated in 2025, our average was a 3.1. So we moved a little bit right. And what's exciting about that is it's giving us a tool that we can start to have shared understanding about wherever you start is okay, but year over year, are we as a system moving towards that right hand? Because that tells us about the reinforcing habits and the alignment and the health of the system. What's come out of this is that we're starting to establish that network, and it's got an evolution that's happening that's building trust and coordination and shared language and sustainable capacity. How am I doing? Do I have a minute to tell you about some of the data, or should I pause?
Why don't we get about 5 more minutes? How's that?
I will take it. I will work. All right. I told you there was a lot of stuff here. I have some voices here. Go back and look at these because they are so, so, so good. But these are some of the members of the Inchelium cohort, and Barisa is one of the participants in the Inchelium cohort. And we just had an opportunity to do a digital literacy cohort last summer out in Inchelium with community and tribal members that was multi-generational and so, so special. But I'm going to tell you about the impact piece. So in the last 2 years, on that increased access level, we've had just over 400 refurbished computers that went back out into the community. 362 graduates of the digital literacy program in the communities that were bright yellow. So you'll see them listed here and then how many graduates have completed that program in each of those communities. 24 tribal cohort graduates, thousands served in the tech help services. and the effort has been truly regional. We're coming in with the skills, devices, and connectivity, that sense of community and celebration, so that we see a lot of people back a second or third time Araceli participated and is now leading digital navigation efforts. On the increased capacity level, so our AmeriCorps member, Jennifer Walker, has had, she's supported just over 70 events this year and 900 residents that she's interacted with. We've trained just over 300 digital navigators across the region. And when we say across the region, actually, the digital navigators, as we moved into a virtual space, we actually have trained 324 unique digital navigators, but we've had 577 total participations in the trainings from all across the state. They're virtual, so people have noticed we're doing this. That community of practice draws from this group of community volunteers. So if it's red on that map, we've had at least one digital navigator that we've trained in that space. And we're now, as we move into this digital access community of practice, our partners, our commitment makers, are leading the content for the community of practice. So Action Health has presented, NCW Libraries has presented, the Apple STEM Network did financial aid literacy. So the people who are presenting now are our partners, and we're hoping to create that opportunity. Our coalition has grown to over 90 organizations. In total, over 2 years, we had 101 commitments and 72,000 people reached. The libraries that I mentioned are the George Library, the Wenatchee Valley College, and the Big Bend Wi-Fi expansions. It was a $710,000 investment in the region for Wi-Fi expansion, and it made a huge difference. So you might have thought, well, the colleges already had maybe some public access Wi-Fi. That would not be the case. This is actually the Wi-Fi in Wenatchee Valley College, just to show you the upgrades in the Wenatchee campus. And this is their before our investment, and then after, you can see the connectivity increase. This is the OMAC campus, where they now have Wi-Fi access. And the George Public Library, for people coming to visit, this is the data from 2024 when we did the upgrade, and the number of unique users per day. George had in August and September 287, and this is a brand new library branch. So this was when they first opened. By the time November and December hit, they're at 430, 451. So you have 451 unique Wi-Fi connections in George at this new library branch. I won't get into some of the details on the design principles just for the sake of time, but what I have, if I've conveyed anything, hopefully it's that the thought and the intention behind this work is to build something that is community rooted, that is bilingual, multilingual, very, very relational, designed for our region. I'm going to go over to this slide that has the summary graphic here. Our strategy is unique because it was designed for our communities, with our communities. So it includes the alignment and the human capacity and the infrastructure and the access, but it's done in a way that is very intentionally regional, relational, rural designed, and cross-sector. Looking ahead with Thriving Together support, we hope to continue to grow this region. And so I've got some of our goals, again, in that slide deck. But I'm going to end on this slide here and tell you that I'm just so grateful for the partnership and the investment that you all have made. I think we write a lot of grants, and $1 million investment is actually not small. That's a very, very, very big deal. It's made an incredible difference in our region, both in the like physical infrastructure pieces and in the human and in the connection and in our community. And I do believe that together we're building a more connected future for everybody to be able to benefit from that technology. So thank you for your time and for a couple extra minutes.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
I was blessed to get to work alongside Sue for many years, so I know the impact that she has and the far reach and systems understanding that she does. And as we think about our community care hubs and our vital conditions and all the work, Peter said it really well, very persuasive about the multi-year commitment and what's been able to be accomplished um, with the $1 million investment. So thank you, thank you. Any questions for Sue before I'm thinking we'll take a little break? Questions?
I'd also put there as board's thinking and responding for questions. I'd also be curious, as you're thinking about the work we're doing as Thriving Together with both the community care hubs and the network, how are you guys thinking this intertwines with this work? And what thoughts does this spur and what Thriving Together could do as well? And that's to the board, not to Sue. We already provided her response.
I have a question. I don't know if John's was a rhetorical question or not, so I'm not going to answer
Well,
this
it,
question.
it wasn't rhetorical, but well, you can choose. You can ponder it and come back later, or you can answer now. Go ahead.
No, very impressive. I love the slide on the systems thinking and change, and the fact that I know my organization has partnered in various ways with uh, the Tech Alliance and working with CHPW on digital navigation and linking everything. So I know that there's work out there. But I guess this is more of a comment than a question. Just understanding how much, in my mind, just from an outsider, it was really more just that surface change that we were trying to do, getting internet access and how to help people understand how to navigate and things like that. But really, the work that you've done more on the lower levels of the system is very impressive. I guess how are you getting this message out is my question. Because it's very compelling for somebody who doesn't know, who thinks they know what's going on, but the reality is your team has done so much more with a lot of this effort.
I think it's actually a really like that means it's working. So we're working alongside so many of those partners and helping them. And that's what when we're doing that regional network and coalition work, you shouldn't see NCW Tech Alliance and our name everywhere. You should, if you're in Warden, you see Prisma. Prisma is your person. We're her person or her community rather, right? And I think that's where, being alongside the Met How at home and making sure that they have who they need to be able to share Tech Tuesdays with their volunteers. Their program outcomes are a part of the system's output. And I think that, when we can work that way, whether and if we're doing it in a cross-sector way, we are nurturing the entire system to move with more alignment. And so the strategy is not as easy as, oh, here's the way we're getting the word out. Oftentimes we sit down and say, okay, who do we need to make sure is aware of this thing? And it includes a list of people, a list of organizations, and a multi-pronged strategy for getting the word out about it. But the digital literacy cohorts, for example, we are working with the adult basic literacy program at Wenatchee Valley College and Big Bend, and they're offering their courses and accumulating a list of people who really do need digital literacy skills to be ready to benefit from high school completion courses. And we have migrant coordinators at the school districts who make referrals for computer placement. So we're working as a system there to make sure that we've got coordination and meet people wherever they happen to be when they need help. And then we respond. It's a nurse cell, a neurobiologist would say, right? You're not the neuron. You're the person who makes sure the neuron can fire.
Peter?
Peter?
So Sue, I really got it from your presentation when I think about belonging and civic muscle and how much depends on digital access because of how rural and dispersed our counties are and how much happens online. So you talked about having this being embedded in all kinds of organizations' programs. And I guess the question is, how big could this get? Um, if all kinds of organizations like Meadow at Home and all these others, can just go viral where all kinds of organizations are actually participating in this way uh, with other services that they offer. I guess that's one of those.
Mhm.
I mean, what you've done is really impressive, um, and yet the need for this goes well beyond the 3-year funding. This is a forever kind of thing that needs to be sustained somehow.
Yeah, and it was a model, I mean, perceptively, Peter, it's a model that the state has taken interest in as well. And I didn't share that part today, but I think Wendy and John and I have all been tapped where the different ACHs are working across the state. They're curious about the way that we partnered together. They're curious about how to establish that in a statewide capacity as well. And a statewide or public sector sustainable investment is something that we'd like to try to advocate for. It makes sense. Unfortunately, the state had a digital navigator fund that, it didn't go so well for them twice now. And so it's going to take legislators getting an appetite to go back at this a third time with a different configuration. And this wasn't the year to make that happen. But I think our regional legislators are aware of the work that we're doing and are very interested. So I'm excited to see what happens with the new advocacy coalition capacity for Thriving Together, to see what that could look like to have a more sustained state level investment in digital access would go over really well.
Can I just tie just a little bow around the digital equity work and tie it together with the vital conditions? You heard it thread throughout Sue's presentation, but just to show a few of them, I was writing them down. The opening story about the small businesses and the digital literacy skills. This is really about meaningful work and wealth. You can see how teaching them digital skills, how it's enabling them to grow their small businesses, and helping to create those conditions to gain momentum and grow wealth within their business. You saw the digital navigation trainings, the English or the literacy courses. They're in English and Spanish, creating spaces of inclusivity and belonging. And you saw through the MyChart trainings that these volunteers across the region who are learning, that's all about embracing the civic muscle and civic engagement. So those are just 3 concrete examples of vital conditions, really moving upstream and strengthening conditions for our community to really grow and thrive. And digital equity, digital access, digital literacy is all just one way we're doing that. So with that, Linda, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Again, thank you. Thank you very much, Sue, for the time, for all the work, the vast areas that we touch. So we're looking forward to more to come. Okay, John, are we okay with a little bit of a break?
I think we're good. Yeah, I think we can be flexible a bit and take a 5-minute break. And again, thank you, Sue, for coming and presenting and being a good partner.
All right.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. We will come back at 3:45. Back. Mariah, I've already looked through our training and capacity impact report, but I know we are excited to hear more from you.
Wonderful. I am excited to share. I am going to share screen in just a moment first, and if I get glitchy at all, please interrupt me and let me know, and I'll turn off my video because Wi-Fi at my house is not always reliable. So I wanted to start off by noting that this was a team effort to get this version to you in time. I took last week off for spring break, and I want to thank my team members for getting this version to you because it was not quite wrapped up when I left. We have noticed a few things that need to be changed. So this isn't the final public-facing version. You're going to see a version that's a little different. But we do plan to share the final version on the website, and I think we may also print a few. I know Veronica was wanting to share with partners, and then I was just messaging with Claire at the Community Foundation, and because we have a partnership with Community Foundation and Icicle Fund for the NPI projects, which I'll focus on, I'll share those. They were wanting to possibly have a few copies as well. I'm also going to paste in the chat some questions. And John, make sure that these are exactly what you were hoping to have board members think about during this presentation. So I'll share that, and then I will share my screen.
And similar to a lot of the work we're doing, what I prefaced as Mariah gets that up, is we're really starting and encouraging board members to think as you're looking at our priorities, our strategies, and where we're heading in, or can you guys continue to provide input in the work and partnerships we have to help shift us in a direction that's in alignment with this work. And so thinking what are things we're missing, what are things we should include in capacity building, what are things we should consider as we're looking at how it aligns with our strategic priorities and our mission, and gaining input through these presentations on that. With that, I'll turn it back to Mariah.
Thanks, John. So it looks like it's at 190 Zoom. If that's okay with everyone, I'll just keep it there so we can see without having to squint. So this was a project idea that, so Kristen and I, during our weekly check-ins, we had kind of talked about doing something because last year was the first year where we really started to track. We've always done evaluations for our trainings, but they were just not consistent across all of our trainings. Some of our facilitators had their own, and there was just not a consistent way to kind of measure the outcomes of these trainings. So spring of last year, so there was, and you'll see in the report, you'll see kind of why there's a few that have different measures. But we developed a Microsoft Forms standardized evaluation tool that we use for all of the trainings now. So that way it can be done for our virtual trainings, and then it can also be done for anything. I actually still do the old school print out and bring the evaluation forms to trainings because folks are more likely to actually fill them out if they have to handwrite them, I think. So we have all of that information now, and so we wanted to put it together in a report. So we have here just kind of the overview page that kind of lists all of the workshops, which you may have noticed if you had a chance to glance over this. I touched base on each of the trainings listed here, except for the recovery coach training. So I wanted to make a note of why that is. So the recovery coach trainings are done a little differently. They're a CCAR instructor training held virtually, and the data is just a little different. And we're actually having discussions with Jim, who does those trainings, to see if we can standardize some of that and then have maybe similar data in the future for those. So 357 individuals attended a training or workshop in 2025, which is awesome. And then I also wanted to note kind of these other collaboration and learning events. And we have reports for these available on our website. So each of the learning sessions had a report available, and those are on our website. I can share in the chat later, but if you wanted information on those actually get shared online. And so I wanted to then touch base on Catch a Fire. And so this is something that we actually started in August of 2024. And sorry, my husband is watching my children and he's doing a great job of it. They're outside the door yelling for me. So apologies if you're hearing that. Um, real life going on right here. So
Hear him,
the
Mariah. You can't hear him. You're good.
Oh, that's great. I can hear them and I'm just like, oh my gosh, if my husband doesn't grab them soon, I'm going to text him and get after him. Not get after them, get after him. Anyway, so the Catch a Fire partnership began in August of 2024. So that was really when we first started enrolling members. So folks have to be a Vital Conditions Network member in order to access the Catch a Fire benefit. And we were just noticing a few things that we were really excited about with this. So 2025 was our first full program year to really be able to look at the data. So in 2025, there was 33 new organizations that joined. So we now have a total of 60 registered. And then I just, for the sake of it, because we already are just through Q1 of 2026. I don't know how that already happened. But I wanted to pull up as of today. So as of end of 2025, we had 60. As of today, we have 68 organizations registered. So we're continuing to see that number increase. You'll see here that 130 services were provided compared to 34 in 2024. Again, 2024 started in August, so that was only a partial year, but still we got to see a lot more projects in 2025 as folks started really using the platform. And then of those projects, you've seen there's just more actual kind of just a full service type project. So the first few projects, folks were just kind of getting a feel for it, and it was more of those like support calls. And we're now moving into, you see 82% of services were considered full service projects. Something that is consistently seen across the board is translation. We have a lot of folks using Catch a Fire for translation. Even folks on our team have used it for that. So that is the most frequently used service through Catch a Fire. So participation and value, we have repeated users. So 17 organizations are considered active users in 2025, and that active user definition is just an organization that it completed at least one project during that program year. As of today, we have 23 active users. So that's exciting to see more folks actually using the platform. You see the number of registered partners and you get excited, and then you see who's actually actively using it. And so we're glad to see that more folks are, engaging with the platform and going beyond just being registered. And then we wanted to note here, so some of these projects, more in-depth projects. One of them that was really exciting that Cafe actually shared with us, their volunteer helped them with a impact report similar to this right here. And so Anna shared that this project will be shared with stakeholders, funders, and partners to showcase the organization's growth and demonstrate the impact of the funders and investments in their work. So this is something that they were, maybe didn't have bandwidth to complete on their own, or they weren't sure where to start on how to design an impact report. And so their, volunteer worked with them to design a 10-page report that they could share out with their board and with the public. So I don't know if anyone has any, I can take questions as we go, or I can take them at the end. If anyone has anything that they are just like a burning question about Catch a Fire, I could pause right now and we could address that now. Otherwise, I'm happy to continue. I do also want to note something that got missed from this version, something that's going to get added back in. There is based on 44 project and call completion surveys, Catch a Fire has a 5 out of 5 star satisfaction rating for the platform itself and a 4.9 out of 5 rating for volunteers. So that is a very high satisfaction rating.
And Maria, too, I might just mention that they are volunteers that are connected, right, that provide the service for the nonprofits, but they are all professionals, and so they're providing a wide range of support with the strategy planning and in addition to translation services. So it's been helpful.
Okay, I'll continue. Thank you, Kristen. Another benefit we provided in 2025 was with Sage Steps Consulting. So another network membership. You had to be a network member in order to, access this benefit. We had 7 organizations that received facilitation support in 2025, and that included 9 different events. There was board and staff retreats, a strategic planning session, and a community workshop. The City of Omak actually held that community workshop, and that was really awesome to see that they used it in that way. So with this, Summer Hess with Sage Step Consulting provided 45 hours of direct facilitation and then 92 hours of preparation and follow-up before and after. And we were able to receive all of that data. And there's some just great quotes here on, her phenomenal facilitation skill sets, not afraid to roll up her sleeves. That is something we'll be changing. And vacuum the floor when they didn't have us in the calendar, to use the room, rolled with whatever was arising, great at co-regulating a room, super grounding, and does thorough prep before facilitating. So Summer is, I've been able to work with Summer in a few different groups, and she is a phenomenal facilitator, and folks obviously really loved that benefit and were able to access those hours and plan those. They didn't necessarily wouldn't have been able to have those board and staff retreats. And I guess I should note, the board is familiar because you had Summer at your board retreat last fall. So you got to see kind of what our partners were able to access through that benefit. Another thing that I wanted to note in this is that we expanded our conference room. So that was really an exciting thing for 2025. So we have allowed for nonprofit organizations to reserve the space for meetings and trainings completely free of charge. They just go on and fill out a little questionnaire on our website and then get linked up with a staff person to help with facilitating that training. So we held 5 workshops in the conference room. So a number of our workshops that we feature in this report, the version or the offering for the Chelan Douglas region was held in our newly expanded conference room. And 8 partner organizations used the conference room for a total of 170 hours, serving 527 participants. And that doesn't include all of the numerous other meetings that staff had with a few partners. This is more so our partners that requested the form through our website. So that was really exciting to see, and it's been really fun. And 2026 is already off to an amazing start with a lot of folks already requesting to use our space. So for the sake of time, I know I need to get moving along. I did want to note for each of these trainings, I'll kind of breeze through them because folks can kind of look on their own. But I did want to note that we are bringing this de-escalation and conflict resolution training back because it was such a hit for 2025. And we actually are doing the same format that we did last year with 3 trainings across the region. And so actually, we already held the first one of the year for this year at our office, and then we'll have Okanagan counties in Omak at the Community Foundation like we did last year, and Grant County this year will be in Quincy. So last year we had 65 participants that completed this de-escalation conflict resolution training, and they gave it a 4.5 out of 5-star satisfaction rating. And these are questions that we consistently ask at the end of, I guess we have in that evaluation form, the overall satisfaction rating, and then these 2 questions are like the main questions for that. And so just whether or not they would recommend the training to a friend or colleague, and then how likely are they to use the skills learned in this training. So you'll see we got a 4.5 or 4.4 and a 4.7 for those. And here's a picture of Jennifer in action. I was so lucky that hosting this at the Omak Community Foundation office, I often forget to take photos, and luckily Gabby came to the rescue, and I just added these photos before I went out. These were taken at the OMAC, and I didn't even know we had them. So this is why it's a wonderful thing to work with partners that know what they're doing. So that's the de-escalation conflict resolution. The Grant Rating Road Trip Summit is something that we partnered with the Nonprofit Practices Institute. So again, that is the Community Foundation of NCW and the Icicle Fund that we pool together funds with them and our staff time. So often it's Claire, Odie, and I working together. And we wanted to bring back this grant writing workshop because it was so successful in 2024. And so we kind of reimagined it a little bit for 2025, and then I'll tell you where it's at for 2026. So Allison Jones of Spark the Fire Grant Writing is just amazing to work with. And in 2025, we held the Grant Writing Essentials and Grants Management in Wenatchee and in Omak. So we had those in-person sessions for both of those offerings in uh, end of March, beginning of April. And then we actually brought it virtually via Zoom. We offered each of them. So we offered Essentials and Management one time virtually via Zoom later in May and June of 2025. And we had some wonderful feedback from folks. Useful, informative, with a knowledgeable and engaging instructor. I feel I have some helpful tools to approach a task which has felt intimidating. I don't feel as inept as I did prior to this class. And we have just a lot of folks that shared that, it was something that was so daunting, so just they didn't even know where to begin. And the way that Allison designs this course, just it's phenomenal. She's really amazing to work with, and I wanted to just kind of highlight a little bit here because I know we don't have a ton of time, but we had 60 folks that completed the Essentials workshop, and you'll see the in-person format and virtual format had a little bit of different because we used we had a different evaluation form before the other one was completely. So I wanted to include both of those there for the transparency of the data. And then for I'm going to keep scrolling, Grants Management, we had very similarly 54 number of participants that completed the workshop with a similar. For 2026, we actually are offering this series completely virtual. We saw that a lot of folks were really excited about that format, and Allison actually teaches courses through, I believe, I can't remember if it's in Whatcom County. So she does amazing with the virtual format because that can be a little bit more challenging. And folks were able to participate back in February. We offered Essentials and Management in February, and then in May we're offering it again. So we'll have each Essentials offered twice and Management offered twice in 2026. And we'll be able to share that information out at a later date. And this time we are Thriving Together decided that we would pool our funds for new trainings with the Community Foundation, with the NPI. So this is something we just took on ourselves this year. We had other exciting trainings that are coming up that I'll share briefly at the end of this. Mental Health First Aid was a new offering for 2025 that we offered 3 times across the region. We've had a lot of folks asking for this training, so we wanted to bring that. And this training course is a national course that actually has its own evaluation form that we get this report afterwards. And so the data is a little bit different, but we had 30 participants complete the course across the region. So with this course, folks have to actually complete pre-work ahead of time. And we noticed that even though we filled the course with 30 folks, the folks that actually came to the training and then completed the course, we dropped a lot of folks because ideally we would have had about 90, complete that with 30 at each location. So that was something that we noticed for this specific training, is that it did require, that pre-work, and folks really had to be engaged all the way through and then complete the course at the end. But for those that were able to complete, there was a 93% of respondents that rated it as helpful and informative. Chelsea was welcoming, informative, and kind. She made a great effort to be inclusive and engage with everyone within the class, appreciated her time and her willingness to offer a training in Okanogan County. So, and then here's a few photos from that. This one taken in our office. So at the end of the training, there's a section where they talk about overdose and Narcan. And so we were able to provide every participant with a Narcan kit with the supplies that we had. So that was kind of a neat thing for them as they went through that portion of the course. And then we were able to present them with the Narcan kit. So they felt even more equipped to handle any challenges that may require that. Motivational interviewing is something we've brought to our region now since 2023. So I'll just kind of keep skimming over this. We had a overall satisfaction satisfaction rating of a 4.8 out of 5 for this training. We offered it twice in 2025. I did include a little bit of a timeline there, just because it is something that we continue to bring to our region. Folks are always asking about this. 40 participants completed the workshop in 2025. And I'll let anyone else that wants to look back at the report for more of that information. And then I wanted to highlight our Wellness Leadership Retreat. We have this coming up for 2026 in just a few weeks. So this is a training with Teresa Pasaconi, and actually our very own Joseph Hunter helps facilitate this. So this really is a 2-day retreat where folks are, exploring simple yet powerful practices to boost energy, mental clarity, creativity, presence, and the ability to listen deeply. We had a number of our staff participate last year, and I think they would all share that it was a wonderful training. As you can see here, it got very high ratings and some really great feedback as well. So we had this was offered twice last year. We did it in May at Sleeping Lady Resort, which was just the perfect setting for this type of retreat. And then in August, we held another one, and that one was at Wenatchee Valley College. This year, our plan is for this May, we have it at Soap Lake Resort. And we are hoping that we can fill that up. We're almost full. We have room for 25 folks, and I think I checked and we're at like 19, 20. So we're almost there. And then here's some photos from that training. And so I'm going to stop sharing. I know, I don't know if anyone's been tracking where we are on time. I have not been paying attention. And then where we are for questions. If anyone's
You're
been
good
in the
on
chat.
time.
Awesome. I didn't know if the chat had anyone.
I'm not seeing anything. Any questions?
No, but I would add too, I know including at the board retreat, we did talk about capacity building support for organizations that are part of our network and the work that we're engaging in. So I am curious from board members if you feel like this has kind of been where we're at in engaging with capacity and supports. Also, I recognize that we've done it through other funded partners, and it's been a great start in movement, and you can see that in Mariah's report. But is there things that we should continue considering doing that you think are really effective? Are there other things we should be thinking of engaging in as part of this as a service for our partners? I would put out there. And that's not a rhetorical question wherever Manuel is.
And then I'm also able to, I'll have the board chime in. And then if anyone wants to hear about some of our other upcoming trainings, what's the next, how much time do we have?
We got that.
Okay. So, if anyone wants to if anyone was pondering those capacity building questions and has anything to share, I will be quiet for a moment, and then I can also share about some of our really exciting, thank you, Kristen, really exciting trainings that we have that we're really leaning into our partnership with the NPI, and it's been an evolution. We started in 2023, 2024, and now we're at the point where it just feels like Claire is just an extension of I spend as much time with Claire as I do with my own team at Thriving Together, I feel like. So I'll share some of that, but I would love to hear from anyone. I like Sarah's comment about joining Catch a Fire as part of my retirement plan with volunteering. That is awesome.
Emilio, you came off mute, so I don't know if you're going to jump in.
Mistake. But thanks for asking.
Well, I'd like to thank Mariah for making such a valiant effort at compiling all of the evaluation data. So, we are trying to continually improve that, gather feedback from participants to determine not only their satisfaction, but how much they're gaining, from these opportunities. So I think with the Microsoft Forms, Mariah's done a really great job at compiling the data, and we'll continue to do that even more.
Manuel?
Yeah, Mariah, I applaud you for, kind of doing the impact. It seems like you guys have gone through some of the training that you're offering other people to make our reports more impactful because they are very well done. The question I had, so are you tracking the number of unique individuals that are participating in these, and what kind of attendance rate are you getting? And then not only unique individuals, but how many of what percentage of our partner organizations are actually utilizing these services?
That is a really great question. So for the uh we so when they register on Eventbrite, we have all of the demographic information, what county, and even down to, the city, age range. We're asking quite a few questions. And we can then track and see, if they are a network partner versus not. So we actually, one of the things another network benefit is for the trainings that aren't free, we are offering a reduced fee for network members. So, for example, the upcoming Wellness Leadership, they get a $50 off their registration if they are a network member. So we're seeing a lot of network members register for that one with the incentive. As for the kind of attendance rate, we do notice with free trainings, when they're often free, folks tend to drop off. So that was one of the reasons we actually started charging a small fee. So the motivational interviewing, and that's a 2-day training. I mean, we're providing them a full, robust training and 2 meals. Well, even if you count light breakfast, that's 4 meals. So we did start charging for that one in 2025. It still was only $25. Any of the trainings that we're doing with NPI, we do charge because that is something that they've noticed as well. When folks do have a little bit of they have a little bit more incentive to join if they actually do. So we often overfill the workshops a bit to knowing that we are going to have a few folks that don't show. So we do have all of that as far as, so for the sake of this report, I just pulled, all of the attendees that actually completed the workshop and put those numbers on this report. But we do have all of the data for who actually registered versus who actually attended and can look back at that and see how many dropped off. I mean, often, so we're filling course, the classes up to about 30, and we often see, then we would have, maybe 24-ish folks, maybe lose 5 or 6 for those ones. It just depends on the training. But we do have all of that and can track. And there are some repeat folks that, it kind of then can become a question like, hey, we've noticed that you've continually registered for these trainings, and then you don't show up. Can we have a discussion about this because it is taking another spot from folks kind of thing. So I don't know if that was kind of a rambly way to answer your questions, but if you have if there's anything
Yeah,
to answer.
I guess I'm curious to see if, kind of this I guess the spans of how many people we're touching. Is it the same people coming to all of this different ones, or do we really see an array of different types of people being exposed to this work and to thriving together?
Yes, so the 357 folks on the front page of, that's not necessarily unique individuals. That was participants that came to any of the trainings. So there are a number that come to many of our trainings that just love our trainings. I could go in and actually count up unique individuals and get that number to you, but that 357 isn't, unique
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
unique participants, if that helps.
So you're saying that's representative of what we,
Yeah, so that we counted up just each of the trainings. So that was kind of, each of those pages that I went into, had the number on there. And then I included the recovery coach trainings as well, in that number. And then that number didn't include the number that came to our summit and those that came to all of our learning sessions. That was just for the trainings that we offered in 2025. But yes, there was a number of folks that were on that list probably 5 times. So
No, and it's a good question, Manuel, because you do see like good, bad. You see people who come to a training and get a lot out of it, so they end up attending a number of trainings. But to your point, that means that it overemphasizes what the reach may look like with those numbers, and it also means that we may be hitting the same population over and over with every training. So we got to start looking at how we redirect our communications to reach a broader group.
I mean, it might not necessarily be bad. The other question that I didn't hear really one was what percentage of our partners are utilizing these services, and or how many different organizations are being represented at these trainings? Because it might be the same person from the same organization going to different trainings. These organizations are probably small and they don't have a lot of people to send. But I think the reach is really not necessarily unique users as opposed to unique organizations that we see are taking advantage of these services.
Absolutely. And we do have that data from, from our demographic information that is asked for at the beginning. I will note that I am very excited about a training that we just held 2 weeks ago in partnership with NPI that was called Tools for Running an Effective Nonprofit. And both Claire and I noticed that there was so many new faces, new organizations that were just forming a nonprofit. They were there because they were considering becoming a nonprofit. So that one obviously wasn't reflected in last year in this impact report, but that was a really just wonderful to see so many new faces. I would say for last year, we did see a lot of new folks because of our offering or for the mental health first aid and the de-escalation and conflict resolution. We really expanded out kind of with those trainings. And there's in the grant writing workshops as well. There was, folks at the OMAC training came as far as, Orville down to Brewster in the Medhow, all over. So there was definitely a pretty wide reach, even if, there was some duplicative. But I can get more of that, and that is a good, really good feedback because that was something that I was thinking about as I was creating this report was, do we want to, is it more important that we're sharing out the total versus the unique? And then maybe also diving into, because I shared this wasn't the final version of this, I do think it would be helpful to maybe dive deeper into that question about how many organizations were touched for each of these trainings. So the individuals, and then maybe we can share a little bit about that. So I really appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, the only other interesting, I think, would be just kind of categorizing the different sectors or what types of organizations are accessing these trainings.
Absolutely.
I was just going to add that I think I started to type and just didn't do it fast enough. We did note on the Catch a Fire page that there were 17 organizations. So I suppose if we have, I'm actually not sure the number of network partners we have at the moment. I think, aren't there about 60 different organizations? So we have about a third of them that are at least accessing that particular service. But yeah, we can find out more for the others. Thanks.
And so, John, your question is really what brought my question about, because I think what you really need to ask are the partner organizations in terms of what's missing. Why are they not participating in some of these trainings? Do they not see that it's relevant to them, and what they might see as something new? So,
Well, and we've talked, especially this year, about engaging those partners to start identifying what capacity trainings they would need. So I think that's been on our mind as well of like, in the end, these have been things that have come up and that was original things we were offering, but we need to figure out more and more what they need to develop a capacity building structure around that.
I did want to note really quickly to kind of get an idea of what we are planning on offering or what folks might want is at the end of so part of the evaluation form actually asks, are there any other trainings you would like to see? And so folks have a chance right there to request a training. And then on our website, we actually have a spot in the events. Is there a training you'd like to see? And we have had a lot of folks actually using that lately with trainings that I hadn't even heard of. So that was pretty awesome to see that they're they're utilizing that and we're getting back to them. So, so those are two ways that we're actively asking folks as we go, rather than like just like sending out another giant survey. NPI is doing similar kind of gathering of information after other trainings, and maybe as a follow-up email goes out. So we do that. And then last year, we did actually send out a mid-year survey to our partners. So around July, we did a Vital Conditions Network partner mid-year survey that I worked with Veronica on to send out. And then we had folks in that survey select how many trainings they'd attended, if they'd been to any of the learning sessions, any other feedback they have for any trainings they'd like to see. And then they had an opportunity to share whether or not they had used Catchafire at that point. So I don't know if we're planning that again for kind of a mid-year, but I thought it was helpful to see where we were at with trainings, and that data I think would be useful, especially now that we have more folks that are a part of our network.
Right. Thanks, Mariah. Lots of good stuff.
Thank you. And we'll be sure to let folks know when the final version is ready up on our website. So thank you.
All right. John, look at us right on time. Board retreat recap.
All right, I'm gonna share screen quickly. Hopefully I can, oh, there we go. So first off, again, thank you everyone who was able to join the board retreat last month. I wanted to say last week, but it doesn't feel like it's been a month, but it really has. We're at Sage Cliff Resort and Spa, just outside. We were able to do it in their main dining area, and you can see the photo here. Really wanted to call out, we also had the opportunity to have Dr. Allison Ball join with Megan Francis, part of the Colville Tribal Business Council. We also had two new board members, Dr. Ben Schultz and Melody Johnston. I see Melody here today. And this was, I think, their first meeting with the board. They got the joy of jumping right into a retreat. So really thank you both as well for being able to just jump in. And I felt like both of you jumped into the conversation. So it was really great to have that. Today, I'm just kind of bringing this back as a memory, because we have a few next steps that will come after this board meeting. But you did receive a summary document in your board packet, just to give you a summary of the things that were covered. I would encourage everyone, if there was anything missed in that summary that we should have included, please let me know. We can also share out, we have all the basic, unedited flip chart notes in that. Happy to share those out if you all think that was useful. But really, we covered this in a few areas. We spent some time giving kind of an update of the organization, where we're at on our strategic priorities and our primary work. We spent some time asking around what success would look like, how we would measure success, how the board gets involved in that success, and its governance. And then we really spent time at the end, each board member got to write an elevator pitch and share that out with the board, a number of ways that'll share it out on how they would describe the value of thriving together. And so a few things that came out really around what success looked like. And I think I'm not going to read these on the screens, but I think a theme for me that continued to emerge was really looking at how we're strengthening our partners more and measuring success through our network partners' strength, growth, and connection, and ability to navigate and be part of the systems. And so that will help us influence more on how we're looking at these different metrics and how we use these metrics to measure if we're contributing that as an organization. Talked a lot about board governance, or had conversations around board governance, specifically around the board assessment, and moving the board assessment along. And really, I think a few things I came to highlight was the role of a board as an ambassador, the role in board governance, and how we're supporting board members to do both of that, and how that assessment will contribute to that. The two things I'll note on those two pieces is we have shared with the exec committee both, well, I'll say all the summary, the flip chart notes, initial table on looking on organizational metrics and measuring, as well as the next draft of a board assessment. And so we're going to be gaining feedback from them to incorporate into a version that we'll be able to share out with the whole board. But just wanted to highlight those are two key next steps. And so we did spend some time really talking about the role of the board as a whole as part of crafting how do we assess ourselves as a board, and then what are we assessing ourselves to. And so, again, like I said, this will be a little bit quick because there's a few more follow-up steps. So I'll continue to look at how we putting things together to support the board and communicating, thriving together value. I think some individuals just it was great to hear how people talk about the value of thriving together that fits with their sector and their individual organizations. And we can continue to support board members in being ambassadors in this work. Some of the metrics work is going to lead to a board dashboard and refining metrics that we can also use down to the operational metrics. Manuel, I know I saw you on here and you turned off the screen. Some of these questions and gaining an understanding of what things to measure. Hopefully we can get the right things measured so we can roll those up to share in a broader board evaluation. It also made me think a little bit, even both Sue's presentation and Mariah's, is that we're measuring, or we're actually funding training and capacity development specifically through us and through what we do, but also through our partner organizations, and how are we looking at how that all intersects collectively and reporting that collectively up to the board versus separate programs. We're going to be working on the board assessment, and then there was initial discussions around sustainability and long-term strategy, and we'll be working on that as well. We're still also, just as an FYI, going through the phases of everything that was listed in the fall board retreat. And so, you know, we've been looking through for our governance committee, as you all know, we've been starting to review our policies and procedures, including the bylaws, code of conduct, and the conflict of interest. Make sure that those are in alignment, and if there was anything that's come up in the retreats, that we've incorporated those in those discussions. But that's it. This was really just to update you all and let you know more to come as we're going through this discussion. So you have the summary. Is there any comments or questions? Is there anything you all felt like I missed highlighting in the board retreat that you'd like to bring up today?
No, this is Manuel. I apologize. There's too much sunshine in the air, so my internet's not acting up. So
It's just
I don't know.
all the
I don't know why my internet's shoddy today.
I think the other thing we'll want to make sure we kind of, as we continue, and the fall, we really had the discussion of having the board retreat really focused on that retreat portion and not feel like a board meeting. And so as we're moving through this, another thing I think, and this might be something exec committee I'll continue to ask for feedback on, is how that those don't feel separate with the board meetings, but how we feel like we're interconnecting both what we're trying to achieve as a retreat with what comes to board meetings and what we're updating at the board meetings. And so that will be kind of a continual track and progress and refinement over the course of this next year.
Well, I appreciate everybody's thoughtful participation at our board retreat. We had a lot of things going on in that space. The facilitation, the opportunity for us to all have our voice, whether it was in small groups or large groups. We missed some of our members who were not able to be there. But not but, it lended itself for a great day and a great day of reflection and next steps. So thank you, everyone, for committing your day to that. And you're right, John, it was wonderful to hear Dr. Allison Ball talk about our efforts and how our efforts have improved the lives of the members and families and students and everyone on the tribal land. So to see that firsthand, I feel like that might be our next Hope Dealer documentary. I'm not joking. I'm not joking.
We'll see how that. We never thought we would be getting into making a documentary. So that again will be something I'd be curious from board member perspective. I know I shared a one slide update and we don't need to get into it now. But there's a power into making those processes and those films, but it was not, I would not say it was something that we originally intended in doing. So at some point in time, it would be interesting, Linda, to your point, is this a space we should be engaging more into? Is virtual storytelling by videos and documentaries, or is it something that just isn't hitting the mark of what we're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And that's not to downplay what the Hope Dealers video did. It's just if this is really something we should continue in the future.
Well, and I heard yesterday the power of a story lasts 22 times, potential 22 times longer than sometimes receiving the facts and the information. So, it sticks with you. Any final thoughts from our board members here that are still with us? I do not have sunshine at my house, Manuel, so I'm looking out going, I mean, it's peeking through, but it's not that bright. I want to thank our staff and where did we lose Mariah? I think we lost her to little ones running outside for compiling the impact, the capacity building impact report. I wanted to get that correct. I read it prior to our meeting. I read it last night, and there's some great data in there. And as Manuel said, some more data that we'd love to tease out and find out more. So we appreciate the efforts. Peter. You're muted still.
I was going to say, I really enjoyed the retreat and the exercises and things that we went to, and just reminded that it's those days are important relationship building times, and that being on a board like this is those relationships are important. It's hard to build them on Zoom like this, and I was really impressed with the quality of the new board members we had and what they were able to contribute, even as new people. So I was really appreciative of that. And but it's also sad that we had 4 board members who weren't there, and I know we all can't make everything, and yet the dynamic changes depending on the who's there, and it's the more we can get everyone there, I think the better for all of us. So I was just noticing that I missed some people whose voices I wanted to hear, and I really appreciated the new voices who were there. It's a both and. And then the other question is, John, back to the screening of the Hope Dealers. Do you have any thoughts about how we might roll that out? Because I wasn't able to attend the screening. I really wanted to see it, and would really like to see it presented in the community. I'd like to see it, and then I would like to see it presented. So thoughts on that?
First off, I'll try to get a link to get to you. Well, I'll get the link to you. And then we've been working with North 40 Productions and Mike Hensley to put basically a screening package together to help facilitate that step. And so we should be able to send that out with the call to action. Kristen, is there anything I'm missing on that?
I don't think so. There's definitely a plan in place to start rolling it out across
So,
the region. Yeah, and across the state too, right?
so if we can get that put together and shared out with the board, then that should, Peter, give you the step-by-step guide to follow to get a screening set up in the region. And even if it's you making the connection on where or who you think would be the best fit to host that screening and us working with them directly, that can be done as well. It doesn't have to all be done on you. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Emilio.
Along the same lines as Peter, unfortunately, I had to be at a funding meeting on the 19th, so I left on the 18th and was not able to attend that screening. But I've heard, I gave my ticket to one of my staff, and then I know my daughter who works in the field was also invited and attended, and I definitely would like to see it. I feel like I missed a lot. I heard such great things about it. In my conversations with my daughter, she said we both were thinking about the same thing. How we definitely have some legislators that are friends of recovery, and those that don't know that they're friends of recovery, that would really would benefit from seeing, the documentary. One, and then two, the retreat. This is, I think, that was my second retreat. Yeah. I didn't even know where the gorge was at. I've heard of the gorge my whole life, never been there, did not know the retreat was next door to the gorge. This Sage Cliff. So thanks. So I really appreciated the venue, number one. Two, the fact that that several of the staff were there, facilitated the groups. I think they having their knowledge at the table with the board was very useful, very helpful. In many, many ways. And then so I really appreciated that. And the fact that we were there, I was able to cut myself a deal with the manager and went there for my 44th wedding anniversary and spent 3 nights there. And oh my gosh, we should do a 3-day retreat. The fireplaces and all that is phenomenal. And I'll help do the fundraising to do that.
Okay.
So it's a beautiful place anyway. So, and the history there is amazing. Says a lot about our area. So good choice.
I'll put out there that I think technically that means the next retreat falls in is it Okanagan County? Or yeah,
Yes.
Okanagan County, right, Teresa? So if anyone has recommendations for Teresa on locations, I know Teresa knows almost any venue or event in North Central Washington, but please share any recommendations with her.
Okay.
So evidently we have to continue to top ourselves time and time again, according to Emilio.
Oh, you've got Sleeping Lady. Now we had Sage. Yeah, yeah.
But I think the pressure is put on Okanagan to find that location.
Well, we have lots of locations in the Methow Valley. I'm just saying.
Yes. Sun Mountain's a beautiful place.
But it is not the only one, though, either.
Send me your ideas, Jody.
Yeah. Peter lives over there.
That's
I
it.
have some ideas. Yeah, I'll send them to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some too. So we'll give you between the two of us, you should have a good list. Oh, because there's also Cassia. I would say Cassia over Sundown.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you,
If
Peter?
it, yeah, if it's enough, if it's big enough, I think it probably is. Yeah.
That was going to be my question if it was big enough, because we held a retreat there and some people, it wasn't big enough to fit us all. They had to go to some mountain.
Hmm.
It's beautiful. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Congratulations again, Dell, and the Leadership Award. That's amazing.
Thank
National.
you.
So very well deserved. Very well deserved. All right. 20 minutes gift of time for everyone. Thank you on this Monday. For those of you who had little ones, maybe on vacation last week or not, or you weren't on vacation, but they were still running around, back to normal. So until we see each other virtually again.
Thank you.
You all.
Thanks, everyone.